All right, good day, folks. Everything new under the sun. It is another week, Monday, February 27th. China is now involved in the war in Ukraine. This is World War III. The world is at war in Ukraine. And China here is sending weapons to Ukraine. U.S. A couple days ago suggested that China might be doing this. And the last straw was that U.S. basically shrugged off the Chinese peace plan and the segregation of Ukraine into two parts. And that was really China saying, here's your last chance. This is the last thing before, we're basically going to go ahead and support Russia in this war. And they, U.S. Didn't want anything to do with it. Neither side wants any peace. You heard it from Monkeyworks. The clips I showed the other day of him speaking and basically confirming that neither side has any interest in peace. Why? Because they're making money hand over foot. The people in power are making a lot of money via ammunition sales, equipment sales, funding Ukraine, which is known world over as one of the most corrupt countries in the world. This is all about money, and the people in control, they're not afraid for their lives. They're sitting fat, dumb, and happy in their bunkers, wherever they are, far away from the theater of war, and they're doing good. But there's a lot of money being made on the western side of this. Neither side is good, morally, ethically related to this. Neither side is in the right, particularly. There are egregious issues on both sides. A lot of money to be made. So what does China have? What are they giving to Russia? This is from War News 247. China entered the war against Ukraine and NATO, delivers PLZ-05 and MLRS area artillery systems to Russian army. So if we look here, they're sending artillery systems to Russia to use in this facility in the theater here. And here's the list. According to the Chinese military analyst Beijing, they still deliver Golden Eagle 500 UAVs, SR-5 artillery systems. This is on top of what they are already transferring. And here's the significant part. The drone swarm systems. The Chinese propose a system which is capable of swarm attacks and automated formation. Each swarm consists of about 200 drones. Now, you've seen articles, you've probably heard people speaking of this before, and even demonstrations from John Holler, for example, of the incredible drone swarms they show at night with the lights, and they can create any image in the sky via these, hundreds of thousands of drones. The U.S. military is looking at this too. This is how future battles will be fought. You think of Star Wars and the Drone Wars episode of the Star Wars videos or movies. And it's not exactly robots, but it is quadcopters, drones that are basically the face of World War III in terms of quote-unquote hand-to-hand combat or combat in the theater that hasn't reached the point of nuclear weapons. And I will suggest to you that Ezekiel 38 seems to describe the drone wars. And this is something we could not have dreamt about, to be honest. Before drones came out and were ubiquitous, you could go down to the your Walmart and buy a quadcopter for $20-$30. Before this time, 20 years ago, drones were not a thing at all. No one knew what a drone was or a quadcopter. But now, certainly everybody knows what a quadcopter is, and they're dirt cheap. They're not manned by humans, so if you lose a few, it doesn't matter. And they can basically provide so many targets that any air defense system would not be able to take them out. Now, Israel has a laser defense system for it, but anyways, let's look at Ezekiel 38. And again, this is a part of the Gog-Magog war. Ezekiel 38, which I believe, again, happens prior to the 7-year period, prior to the Antichrist. I wonder if I can pull this one up. Here is, I think this is the one I haven't moved the arrows ahead on this one yet. And my timeline may be off, but I still think the order of events is key there. And it relates to Isaiah 17, destruction of Damascus, which is, coming. and Israel is constantly bombing Damascus, Syria. But also Ezekiel 38 and 39, the war of Gog-Magog. And the war of Gog-Magog happens at a time when it seems there has been financial collapse and there has been a famine in the land. Because what are they coming to take from Israel? They're coming to take gold, silver, things that are valuable, and also food, so cattle and livestock and such. And what does it say? It says, after many days, so in the last days, the times that we're in now, at the end of time, if you will, of the 6,000 years of man on this earth, after many days thou shalt be visited. In the latter days thou shalt come into the land that is brought back from the sword. So this is the Jews brought back from the sword. They now inhabit the land of Israel, and is gathered out of many people against the mountains of Israel, which have been always waste. Now I think it was Mark Twain that wrote, in the early 1900s. When he visited there, that effectively, it was a wasteland in Israel. All the land was absolute wasteland before the Jews came back and populated it and started growing trees, which really brought it back to life. But it says, which have always been waste, but it is brought forth out of the nations, so the Jews brought out of the nations, and they dwell safely, all of them. Now, do they generally dwell safely? Well, there's terrorist events, but there's terrorist events all over the world, even in the United States. And do you think people think they and believe they live safely in the United States? Yeah, generally speaking, they do. So I think you could say that generally is the case in Israel. They're under constant threat, but many countries are. But relatively, you can go there and live relatively, again, peaceful. Everything's relative. But here's the kicker verse here. Verse number 9 in Ezekiel 38. It says, thou shalt ascend and come like a storm. Thou shalt be like a cloud to cover the land, thou and all thy bands and many people with thee. Now, this idea of a cloud, isn't that what a drone swarm looks like? When they're coming against the land of Israel, could this be indicating or describing basically a drone swarm? And there's other things that indicate that maybe there will be a lack of technology at that time in Ezekiel 38 and 39. If we scroll up here, and I will turn thee back, put hooks in thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields. Now you could take that literally and say, well, maybe that's a technology statement. Maybe there is no technology because an EMP has occurred. But then you look down here and you say, well, what could be like a cloud? And you have to say, well, if there is technology, certainly a drone swarm would be like a cloud, and it could cover the land if you had thousands and thousands of them. And for China, Russia to build thousands and thousands of drones is not a thing. They do that every day, and so this is very plausible. So it's interesting to think about basically that the future of warfare is basically drone wars, not unlike the movie in the Star Wars set of movies. So let's go on here. The situation is becoming quite dire. I think, World War III, at least the overt use of nuclear weapons, is all but imminent. None of us know when this is going to happen, but it could literally happen at any time. If one person makes a single mistake on a nuclear weapon, hits a button they're not supposed to, see something on a radar that they think is an incoming missile or something, that could trigger World War III. Ukraine war poses existential threat to survival of the Russian people. That's what Putin says. It says he warned in the new comments that the Russian people may not survive in NATO nations if NATO nations succeed in imposing strategic defeat on Russia. He presented the proxy war in Ukraine and Western arms being pumped in, which has recently included authorization for U.S. and German tanks, as an existential threat. So the bear is pushed back into the corner, and we continue to poke the bear. And again, I would suggest to you that because they feel it's an existential threat, they're going to act out, and they're going to do whatever they need to protect their sovereignty, and that means the use of nuclear weapons. Again, their generals have come out and stated, we cannot win a conventional war with NATO. They know it. Their generals have admitted it. And so the next escalation will be nuclear. Russia to Ukraine. Ukraine conflict is a war with the West for survival. This is a war of global powers. Russia is consistently saying this is a world war. China is effectively saying by their actions that this is a world war. And I think it's just NATO that doesn't want to admit that yet. So this is the latest thing that happened. An AWACS plane, a surveillance plane, has been taken out in Belarus, apparently by Ukrainians. And this is another black eye for Russia. It's an embarrassment for Russia that their military planes are being taken out. So you had the Crimean Bridge and you have the Nord Stream sabotage, which is all but common knowledge is something that happened because of United States, at least some involvement there. And then you have explosions, mysterious explosions and fires inside Russia. And then you have this AWACS plane in Belarus, which is a strike inside Belarus. This is probably going to draw Belarus into the battle. And then you look at all the strange goings on in the United States, the ransomware attacks, the cyber attacks, the pipelines that are blowing up, the trains that are derailing and spreading chemicals everywhere, the oil plants that are on fire and exploding. 3 from the same company, 2 in Mexico, 1 in the United States, same company, and there were fires at their facilities. These are all incredible coincidences, folks, and I don't think you can look at anything these days and say, and if it looks like a coincidence, I don't think you can truly say that it is a coincidence. I think you really have to be saying, you know what, probably the government isn't telling us the truth. By the way, did you know that the U.S. government has decided to come out and agree and confirm that the release of you-know-what a couple of years ago was from a lab? That's right. The U.S. Department of Energy came out and said, "Oh, yeah, it was from a lab. We confirm that, and that's the conclusion we have come to." Why are they coming out and admitting that now when they denied it and said it was a conspiracy theory before? Well, because they're trying to change public opinion against China, because now there is a war against China. Did you know that? The war with Russia is not even done yet, and they're already trying to sway public opinion against China, making China and Russia the enemy. The West considers ultimatum. So this seems to be a timeline for, I guess the West and Biden is probably sees that his citizens don't want to go to war, and there is now a timeline on it, and they're pushing for this war to be over by fall. Now, is it going to happen by fall? I don't know. And what happens if it's not over by fall? What does the West do? Do they just stop funding Ukraine? None of us know that, but interesting that they have a timeline now of the fall. With new arms supplies, the U.S. and its allies want to provide Kiev with an incentive to try and recapture territory seized by Russian forces. And the West wants to see results in this respect by fall, because they're losing public opinion, because they don't want this to be a drawn-out military conflict. This is Azir Hedge again. Western leaders privately admit that Ukraine can't win the war. So what does that mean? If they knew this all along, they just hadn't told us until now, what's their plan then? Are they just trying to drain Russia of resources and then at the end come to a peace deal with Russia and say, oh, okay, we were just joking. You can have half of Ukraine or whatever it may be. Or does the West actually know that ultimately they will get involved and that this has been the plan from the beginning? The people in control are not stupid. The generals, the strategists of war are not stupid. They knew what the likely outcome of this was from the beginning, as did Russia. And they're both calculating maybe different outcomes or different ways to get there. But the Western leaders, I'm sure, knew and are acting that way, and they have been acting that way, that Ukraine was always going to lose unless the United States and NATO nations kept providing new arms, new ammunition, extra ammunition. And they don't want this to drag on. Maybe they underestimated the Russians, but it's a bit of a stalemate and a quagmire, certainly in Ukraine. People refer to it as a meat grinder, and I think it is. So, folks, I'm gonna wrap it up here. I think the war is increasing. I think there's interesting detail out there about Ezekiel 38, 39. Let me know what you think. I still would tend to go with the fact that maybe some electromagnetic pulse takes them out, and I would take that more literally, the horses and horsemen, than I would, this cloud being a bunch of drones, or a swarm of drones or quadcopters, military quadcopters. But I don't know. So it's something for you to read. Let me know what you think. Read through that whole chapter, and let me know if you think that's on the immediate horizon. I'll leave it there, guys. Thanks for watching. Be prepared. I hope you know the Lord Jesus Christ, because he's coming soon, but some hard times are coming, I think, even before that. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.